The night was silent, not peaceful silent, but the kind of silence that comes when the cold is too strong for life itself. Snow moved across the empty land like drifting ghosts. The wind screamed through the frozen forest, shaking old wooden walls. Inside a small cabin at the edge of the wilderness, an old woman sat alone beside a weak fire. Then something heavy hit her door. She froze. Out here, no one visited after dark, especially not in winter. The sound came again, a faint scrape, followed by a weak, desperate whine. Outside, the temperature had fallen far below freezing. Ice covered the ground like glass. Snow buried the road. Even the trees looked frozen in pain. Animals rarely survived nights like this. The old woman wrapped a thick shawl around her shoulders and slowly opened the door. The wind rushed inside, and there, lying on the frozen ground, was a wolf. The animal didn't growl. It didn't move. Its massive body trembled uncontrollably. Frost covered its fur. One leg bent unnaturally beneath it. Its breathing was shallow, uneven. Feeding, the wolf had dragged itself all the way to her doorstep. Not to hunt, not to attack, but to survive. Its eyes lifted weakly toward her. There was no aggression in them, only exhaustion, only pain, only a silent plea for help. For a moment, she hesitated. A wild wolf could still be dangerous. Years of living alone had taught her caution, but something about the animal stopped her fear. Maybe it was the way it didn't try to stand. Maybe it was the way its tail lay still in the snow. Or maybe it was the look in its eyes. A creature that had already fought too hard and was losing. She whispered softly, "Easy, you came to the right place." The wolf was heavy, too heavy for her aging arms. Still, she refused to leave it outside. She brought an old blanket, wrapped it around the animal, and slowly pulled, inch by inch, through snow, through wind, through freezing darkness. The wolf didn't resist. It simply allowed itself to be saved. Finally, she dragged it inside the cabin and closed the door against the storm. Warm light touched the wolf's frozen fur. For the first time that night, it stopped shaking. She placed the wolf near the fire, but not too close. She knew sudden heat could kill a frozen animal. Carefully, she dried the ice from its fur. She cleaned a deep wound along its leg, probably caught in a trap, probably abandoned by its pack when it could no longer run. The wolf winced but never snapped. Its eyes followed her movements quietly. Trust was forming. Without words, she warmed water and offered it slowly. After several attempts, the wolf drank, a small victory, but a powerful one. She stayed awake all night, adding wood to the fire, checking its breathing, speaking softly so the animal wouldn't feel alone. Outside, the storm grew violent. Snow buried the world beyond the windows, but inside the cabin, two survivors shared the same fragile warmth. At one point, the wolf lifted its head and looked directly at her. Not like a predator, not like prey, but like an equal. Two lonely beings keeping each other alive. Morning came slowly. The storm passed, leaving endless white silence. The wolf was still alive. The following days became a routine of patience. She cleaned wounds, changed bandages, fed small portions of food. Sometimes the wolf refused to eat. Sometimes it slept for hours without moving. But each day, it grew stronger, its breathing deepened, its eyes brightened, and one afternoon it stood, weakly, shaking, but standing. The old woman smiled for the first time in weeks. The wolf began following her around the cabin. Careful steps, curious glances. It watched as she cooked, cleaned, and gathered wood. When she sat by the fire, it lay nearby, never too close, never too far. Trust between humans and wild animals is fragile, but kindness had rewritten the rules between them. At night, instead of howling at the moon, the wolf slept peacefully beside the warm glow of the fire. For the first time since arriving, it looked safe. Weeks passed. The wound healed. Strength returned. The wolf's instinct slowly awakened. One morning, it stood at the open door, staring toward the forest. The wilderness called it home. She understood. Wild creatures do not belong behind walls. She opened the door fully. Cold air entered again. The wolf stepped outside. It paused, looked back at her. Long, quiet, unforgettable eye contact. As if saying thank you in a language older than words. Then it walked into the snow and disappeared among the trees. Days went by. The cabin felt empty again. The fire crackled alone. But one evening, just before sunset, a distant howl echoed across the valley. Strong, alive, free, the old woman stepped outside. Far on a snowy ridge stood the wolf, healthy, proud, watching over the cabin. Not trapped, not dependent, just remembering. The wolf howled once more before turning back to the wild. Winter slowly faded. Snow began to melt. Life returned to the forest. And sometimes, at night, she still heard howls in the distance. They no longer sounded lonely. They sounded grateful, because compassion does not always need words. Sometimes, it is simply opening a door when something broken arrives in the dark. That night, a wolf came searching for warmth. But both of them found something greater, proof that even in the coldest places on earth, kindness survives, and sometimes the wild remembers who saved it.